Joining us now to tell us where we stand on the vaccine front is Dr. Dean Fanelli, an expert on pharmaceutical and chemical-related technologies. So, Doctor, when we talk about exactly the importance of a vaccine, it seems to be a conversation that we've been having for the better part since the beginning of this virus even came to the United States. So, is it necessary to have a vaccine in order for us to return back to normalcy?
Yeah, it is, unfortunately, because we think of, the only other way we're going to get back to normal is by acquiring natural immunity, and that's by being exposed to the virus. And we've already seen over 165,000 Americans have died because of the virus. So it's unrealistic to use natural immunity as the barometer of, the threshold of are we safe? So the only way we're getting back to normal, to answer your question, is when we have a vaccine.
And President Trump, for example, has been saying that we might get a vaccine by the November election or around that time. Dr. Anthony Fauci has said that it might be closer to the end of the year, that being December or January of 2021. Are you confident that we will get a vaccine in that time period?
Yeah, I think by election day, it's unrealistic. I know the president has suggested that he's optimistic, but, a lot of these phase 3 trials that are currently underway, they take 2 doses. So after you give the first dose, you have to wait 28 days. You give a second dose. Then we need time to see, is the dose actually producing an immune response? So if you put that timetable in perspective, I just think the timing puts us out to the end of 2020 at the earliest, more likely the beginning of 2021.
And when we talk about the development of a vaccine, typically, we're usually talking about a years-long process. I believe the average is somewhere around 10 years for the development of a vaccine when we look at all of them together. And I think the record at this point is something around 4 years when we're talking about testing, development, and distribution of a vaccine. And now we're talking about possibly getting it done within 1 year, 18 months. Do you have concerns that perhaps the American people, or I guess people all around the world for that matter, will be hesitant to take a vaccine that has been expedited so much?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we're definitely talking typically around a decade to get these approved. I saw a poll last week that said only 42% of Americans said they would get the vaccine. That's down from 55% in May. So I think it's very important, and I think we're a little behind the 8 ball here, but it's very important to get an educational campaign and a marketing campaign to explain to the American people why it's so important to have a vaccine, why, although these tests were shortened drastically, why they're still safe, why the vaccine is effective, and most importantly, the only way we get back to normal is to have this vaccine.
And Dr. Fanelli, right now we're looking around the world, and Russia, for example, says that it may have the first successful coronavirus vaccine. It's still going some tests, but Vladimir Putin, for example, said that his daughter has taken it. They're talking about distributing it to sample sizes throughout the country within the next 2 weeks. I'm assuming that the United States has pretty strong safeguards put in place as far as regulatory mechanisms. Does Russia and other countries around the world have the similar type of mechanisms, or are you a little bit more skeptical of their findings?
Yeah, as it relates to Russia, I mean, it's ethically irresponsible, it's reckless, and frankly, it's dangerous. I mean, there's a reason you do these phase 3 studies that have these large cohorts of subjects that receive the candidates. I mean, basically, they're alleging that they approved a vaccine on less data that the current vaccines that are in phase 3 have. And more importantly, they haven't even published their results in peer-reviewed journals. So I'm very hesitant about that. The United States, Japan, Europe, these all have exceptional regulatory bodies that will look at safety, will look at efficacy. When it comes to Russia, this is, it's disappointing and it's just propaganda. There's no way a drug like that will be approved in the US. Doesn't mean it doesn't work, but we need to have the safeguards for exactly the reason you pointed out, to convince the people and reassure people that A, it's safe, and B, it works.
And that is really troubling, because perhaps the only thing worse than not finding a vaccine in the near future is coming out with a faulty one, because that'll completely destroy public trust in taking one that eventually does come to the market in a safe way, as you were mentioning, following that phase 3, going through the proper safeguards. If there's any hesitation about taking a possible vaccine because of the actions of Russia or some other country for that matter, that instills a lack of confidence, that could be very problematic from a public health perspective, but also from an economic perspective as well, because as you said, really a vaccine is the only way that there's going to be confidence for people to go back to restaurants, movie theaters, whatever it may be. So we're really keeping an optimistic eye on that front, but I think it's important for everybody to also be very skeptical and a little bit patient when we're talking about this too, because what we're doing has really never been done before. But Dr. Dean Fanelli, I appreciate you coming on, breaking down where we stand in the effort for a vaccine. Thank you.